The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
I'd like to welcome everybody to this eConnect training session. I thank you all for coming this morning. Wanted to let everybody know we do have this webinar scheduled for the second Tuesday of every month. We have sent out invites if you need more. Contact your eConnect representative and we'll get you the links to register. The next webinar will be on May 13th at 9 o'clock Pacific time. In today's webinar, we'll continue to go over the same things we've been going over, which is the basics of the eConnect system. I'd like to try something a little different now that we've been doing this for a while and let the audience drive the direction we go. If we want to dive more into query building, more into data mining, we can do that. Please feel free to raise your hand. I can turn your microphone on and you can speak and ask the questions, or you can type your questions in. We do have Marcus standing by to read through the questions and get them over to me so we can answer them quickly. So let's go ahead and get started. So this is our home screen. On our home screen we have a lot of neat features depending on your access to the system. Some of these tiles may be there and some of them might not be there. On our login history page, this is a new feature we've added where it actually is going to show you everyone who's logged into the system. It's going to show you how many times they've logged in, the total time they spend on the system, and the average time per login. We can also click on this number 14 on mCali, and we can see each day they logged in and the start and end times when they logged in, so we can see when they're actually using the system. This is great for tracking your employees to find who's actually using the system. Below you'll see we have this graph that shows up. This graph is another new tile we've added, which will show you which users are actually using the system, how many clips have been viewed, how many have been set to pending, how many have been cleared, how many have been dismissed. Coming over here, we can select any employee and compare that employee against everybody else. For instance, on today, all users in our system, in our demo system, have reviewed 13 video clips or data clips, and I've reviewed 9 of them. We can do the same thing. We can drop down and look at Marcus and see that Marcus has reviewed none today. Allows you to keep track of who's actually using the system, if they're actually reviewing anything. The other side of this tile is going to have a number 10, and I just want you guys to remember this number 10 because this is where pending reviews are going to show up when we flag things red. We'll come back to that here shortly. So we're going to go ahead and move off this home screen because everything else is going to be the same as it has been for years. You're going to have, the number of cameras you have online, the approximate revenue, how many terminals are online, and then this is going to run through your queries. And it'll just go through all of your pre-made queries that are on your summary page. If you ever want to click on it, you can. It'll take you right to that query and the results. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to move over to the POS tab. Once in the POS tab, the main view you'll spend most of the time in is going to be the summary view. The summary view is going to have a list of queries that we've made or we've put in your system or that you've made and you've saved that are now showing up in the summary view. On the summary view, there's 2 ways you can really run a query. The first one's going to be clicking on the picture of the graph, and if you mouse over the picture of the graph, it says graph. So if we were to click on this and we look at all discounts, we can see it graphed out the last 7 days. And if we mouse over each one, it'll tell us the date and how many were on that day. We can put in our own custom dates that we'd like to review and apply it, and it'll add the extra day in. We can also click the drop down and come in and select any group of days we want in this preset. So if I want to see the last 30 days of all discounts, I apply this, and now it's going to show me all 30 days and all the discounts that have been run out. Now I can click on any one of these, and it's going to bring me that day and time of all the discounts. Going back real quickly, the other way you can look at stuff is to click on the words. And if you click on the words of the query, it's going to take you to yesterday's results. So by clicking on all discounts, this is showing me all of yesterday's discounts. There were 507. Another new feature we've added is before, if there wasn't a camera associated to it, the only way you could review the information was to click on the check summary. Well, we decided that it was really helpful if you were able to see more of the check view, meaning whenever you're looking at the data and the video together and you have the check summary on the right hand side, it actually scrolls through in real time, kind of shows you what's going on. So now what we can do is we can come over and we can see what happened before the discount. When we see our discount here in blue, and we see what happened after our discount. So at a quick glance, we can see that this discount happened, and then 17 seconds later, it was tendered out. Now, once I move my mouse away from this, you're going to see a black flag appear. Now, this flag means it's been reviewed. And if you look down here, it now has flagged it that I've reviewed it, and I reviewed it on the 8th at 9:06 a.m. for 23 seconds. And consequently, once I move it away and I come back, it's going to show that I've reviewed it again. I guess it makes me wait a few seconds. So it's just all one review. Same thing on your video. If we come into one of our video clips, and we can see this airport employee is getting a discount. Once we move away, it's going to flag this that it's been reviewed. And this is all what's showing up on that home screen. Whenever we were back here on our home screen, and it's looking at the number of reviews done for the day. Every time one of these flags pops, it's tracking it. Now, if we were watching this and we deemed that it wasn't something that was legitimate or something we wanted further review of, or we wanted to save it to view later, we wanted someone else to look at it, we could come over here to this red flag, and we'll set it to pending. And by clicking on it, it's going to bring up this comments. And we can type in, please review this discount. And I'm going to update this. Now what will happen is right there on the left-hand side, this flag is going to change from black to red. And you can see that it's now updated to where we can see the original time I looked at it, second time I looked at it, and then I set it to red in my notes. Now whenever I told you to remember that number on your home screen, our numbers now increase from 10 to 11. And we can see that we've added it right here. And I click on it, and I can now return to this. All right, sorry about that. Let me back up 1 second. It looks like we froze. So right here, we can see that this is the clip I just froze with please review discount. Now, what's great about this is now anybody can come in, whether you were on shift with me or not, whether you're coming in 4 days later, whether you're my manager, you can see what I'm working on. And just by clicking on that result, it's going to bring you to this clip that I've just flagged. And now the manager can go in and review it, or another investigator. Now, once we've deemed that this is good, or we've talked to their manager and we figured out this is a good discount that truly is an employee, we want to clear it off so it's not staying in that on the front page anymore. So we can go to the green and we can set it to close. This is going to allow us to write in a comment. So I wrote checked, and this is an employee. And I update this. And now what will happen is, once we move away, it's going to change this flag to green. So now anybody who comes back to this is going to see that it's been reviewed. Now the other great thing about these flags is if another employee hops in and they start looking at discounts, they can see that these have already been reviewed and they don't need to review them, which is really going to save time on the investigative side of things. One of the things we were noticing is, an employee from one shift or one employee would come in and they would start looking through no sales or voids, and then they would spend their whole shift doing this. And then the next person would show up on a different shift, or another employee, and they would do this exact same thing. And so we were doing the same thing over and over again, and which is essentially wasting everybody's time. Now we're flagging it and tracking each move that everybody does so that we're not duplicating work. Like before, I don't want to look at 507 discounts for this day, and so I'm going to aggregate this out. All right, looks like we have a question just came in. It's asking which version of software we're running. And this is our latest release. This release came out in January, and this is 5.14. If you ever wonder what version you're having, or if you talk to a support person and ask you what version you're running, if you look right down here in the bottom right corner, it's going to say the version that you're on. Hope that answers your question, Chris. If you have any more, feel free to send them over. All right, so like before, didn't want to look at 507 results, so I'm going to aggregate it. One of the things I like to do is I really like to start by revenue center to determine which revenue center is doing the most discounts, and then I'll narrow it down by employee. So I'm going to go to revenue center first, and I can see that all 554 has done 133 discounts this day, and then this restaurant did 110, and these two, for the most part, are accounting for over 50% of the discounts for the day. Quickly, I can click on it. Now I have my results. As you can see on this particular revenue center, I don't have any cameras, so I'm strictly working with data. So from here, I sold 133 records. So I want to go ahead and aggregate it. I'll separate out by employee. I had 2 employees working that day, so separating it out it helps, but in reality, it's not going to be much help to me. So I'm going to go ahead and go back. And I want to separate it out by menu item. I was trying to discount. I don't want to do that. So we'll do it by amount. Now, this is what's interesting. Now I'm looking and I can see that 66 of the discounts were for $1.12. And so now I want to know why is $1.12 the number. And we see that that's going to be an airport discount. And now I can actually go in and start to see if there's any type of pattern. Do I see a no sale that happens after the transaction? Start trying to determine if this $1.12 is a potential for theft or fraud. The one thing I've discovered is that any employee that has the ability to memorize any number, such as $1.12, it's going to be easy for them to take whatever the total due is, subtract it in their head, give the person the right change, but keep the $1.12 for themselves. So this would be an employee I'd start looking at. I'd also like to see if there's any other employees at any other revenue centers doing this. So what I would do is come back over to my discounts, to my revenue centers. I know I've got a camera at this one. This is our test site, so it's not one we use on a regular basis. And here's all my discounts. Let's go ahead and aggregate that by dollar amount. And at this revenue center, $5 was our magic number. We had 39% of the results. So I can click on them, and you see they're all airport discounts, so I can quickly come over and see if I see an airport employee there. Now, just offhand, I'm going to say this doesn't really look like an airport employee, but then I got to watch the money and make sure everything looks good. Could be somebody who's just wearing a big jacket and they're off shift and flying somewhere or going to work. So. All right, any questions so far on the POS and summary view, flags and aggregation? All right, if we don't have any questions, we'll go ahead and we'll move on. We're going to touch on the behavior report, and then once I get done with this, we're popping the query builder, and I want to spend a little more time in the query builder, since it is one of the more difficult things to learn how to use and understand. So we'll start with the behavior report. In the behavior report, we've changed up a few features in here that make it a little easier for you to find what you're looking for. and that's most of it is going to show up right in the center part where you search either for your employees, your terminals, or your revenue centers. Now, I've always been one that always says I want to look at revenue centers because the whole purpose behind the behavior report is to compare apples to apples. We want to know um, who is outside the norm. So I look at all the employees working in a single revenue center and I compare them against each other. That way, anybody who's outside the norm will notice. If you were to take, two bars in a casino, one that's in the middle and one that's way off in the corner, the one in the middle is going to get more business. So I would expect certain numbers to be higher than at the bar that's back in the corner. Um, One of the things we added is the search bar. So if you're like most places, you have a ton of revenue centers to show up in here. So just like with the employees, you can scroll through and find the exact one you're looking for, but none of us want to do that. We want to get it quick. We want to get done with it. So I'm going to come in. If I want to look for an employee, I can type it in now, and it will give me the results that match. This also goes for my terminals, and also goes for my revenue center. So I type in Zoot. It's going to get rid of all of them except for the Zoot location. It makes locating what you're looking for a lot quicker. So now that we found all Zoot, this is what we want to add. We're going to click on the picture of this guy. You see it says add all active employees from this revenue center for the selected time range. Now the default time range is what you see on the left. By default, it's going to take today's date, and it's going to set an interval range of 7, and or range interval, sorry, and then an interval count of 4, which is going to give me 28 days of data. This is what we prefer to look at because data is where we start, is a month worth of data is really where we're going to start seeing any deviations or anybody doing anything outside the norm. Shorter data set will work, but this is what we found is really the sweet spot for the behavior report. Now we can come in and select some POS events. Begin checks one I always like to include. This lets me know who works the most. Because if somebody was working 40 hours a week and everyone else is only working 20 hours a week, I would expect them to have more no sales or more voids. So I'm going to come down here. I'm going to select menu item void. I'm going to select discount. You can also come over here to the query events. And these are all of your queries that were in your summary view. And so if you want to add any of these, all we have to do is find one we want to look at. So let's look at total due less than $1.08. So now we selected a query event. We selected some POS events. We've got our date range set up, 7-day interval, and a 4 interval count to give us 28 days of data. And then now there's an arrow over here, and this is now how we run the behavior report. And as you can see, we now have all our employees on the left-hand side. On this newer version, as you scroll to the right, the employees stay there. You can see our first 7-day set right here, our second 7-day set, our third 7-day set. As we scroll, those will move over and out of the way, and we get to our averages. Now, like I said before, I wanted to have begin check in there because now I can see that this employee, Marina Ruiz, has the most begin checks. This usually is going to mean that they spend the most time working, they have been there the longest seniority, or they work during the busiest time of the day. She has the most checks, which is something I would expect to see. But immediately where my eye's drawn to is this person right here, which is Susan Perez. Susan Perez doesn't have nearly the number of begin checks, nor nearly the number of discounts, but she far surpasses Marina in voids. The average employee is doing 8 per week, and she's averaging 25.5 per week. So right off the bat, this is where my focus is gone. So I want to go back over here to this previous week. Excuse me, and I want to review what she's done in the past week. Now everything on the left is all hyperlinked back to the original data. It'll also be hyperlinked back to the video if you have video 1 and 2. If depending on the retention of your video, if your DVR system only saves video for 2 weeks, you're only going to be able to go back to 2 weeks of data to see the video. But we hold the data longer, so at least allows you to analyze the data to see anything that can happen in the future. So I'm going to look at her 28 menu item voids for this day. And so here are my voids, and now once again I quickly pop in, view these voids. see if they appear to be legitimate. And like before, if we want to flag it, we can always come over and set to pending, or if we deem it's good, we can set it to closed. Okay. Another neat thing about the behavior report, what I'm encouraging a lot of people to do, is once you've created your POS events and your query events that you like to search for, and your date range is set the way you want, add in your revenue center and then save this. We'll call this all Zoot webinar. So we go ahead and save this. Now we can clear out all of this and reset this. So now we're back to what it looks like when you first come in. When I come in now, I can hit the drop down. I can click on the All Zoo webinar and hit load. And now it's going to load everything I had checked and all the names I had in here with one click. Now I run the report and I'll immediately have my results. I don't have to go through each time and do it. The other reason I like doing this is most of the time you tend to look for the same things over and over again. Now I can clear out this revenue center and just quickly add another revenue center and run the same report. So I've streamlined how much time I've spent in the behavior report to get the results I'm looking for. All right. Any questions on the behavior report? Alrighty, let's go ahead and move on to the query builder. The query builder is probably one of the most difficult areas for people to understand and use. To start out with, let me just run a quick query for you. So whenever, I've told you before, or I've told many people, if you want to search for something in the query builder looks for what we call simple queries. It's looking for a single line. And when I say single line, if we open up any of these checks and we look at the check, we can see this is a begin check and it happened on March 23rd and it was $0 amount. The terminal was 231. The employee was Cecilia. And it was all 554. That is one single line. This airport discount is one line. So if we want to, we can search for March 23rd for an airport discount by this employee. And that's a single line. Where you start getting into more advanced queries, which you can't do in the query builder, you're actually looking for a discount or two sides plus a discount. Now, because those are on two separate lines, we have to build an advanced query for that, which you can't do in the query builder. That's where you contact us and we help you build that query. So that being said, does that make sense to everybody? Let's stop there first, make sure. Alrighty, let's see, any questions? So we'll move on. Okay, so now that we're in our query builder, it's basically a four-step process, and we've numbered it so that you can follow it as you go. The first was going to be to set your date range. Now you can come in here and you can manually input your date range. You can hit the drop down and select the date you're looking for. You can manually enter the time. Or once again, you get the drop down and select the date range you're going to look for. So let's look for the last 7 days. Now I'm going to move down to step 2, which is select my criteria field. My criteria field is what I can search by. I can search by terminal number, terminal name, table number, revenue center name or number, the quantity, the object number, group number, employee name, employee number, monetary amount, basic data, check number. All these I can search by. So the one I tell everyone to start with when you're first using this is going to be by basic data. What basic data does is, see it adds this configure field in, and then it adds the filter conditions. So the filter condition we want to add here is anything that shows up on a check. We're basically saying look for any check that contains blank. And so as long as you type it in the exact way it shows up in your POS system, it will search for that. So for instance, I could type in water. And when I query this, now it's going to show me all of the waters. Oh, I forgot I selected 1 week, so this might take just a moment to populate. There we go. And now I can see all the waters. There were 5,635 waters done this week. Now, let's see if we can find. Let's do. All right, so we've added the basic data for water. We see there's a lot of them in there. We want to keep building this query because we really just want to know what happened at all zoo. So what I can do is I have my basic data field already here. I can now say, let's add the revenue center name. So now you can see I've got my basic data of water, my revenue center name. I hit this drop down, I can select all zoo. So now I'm telling it I'm looking for basic data of water and all zoot. Now I've queried this, and now it's going to give me only waters that were sold at all zoot. Okay. If you have questions during this, please feel free to raise your hand in the middle of it, because it's going to get more confusing as we go, I'm sure. So our original query of just looking for water returned 5,635 results. By adding in the revenue center, we dropped it down to 1,597. So now we have this. Well, to take it another level, obviously you guys have understand that we're doing basic data in the revenue center. But let's say we want to look for this revenue center, we want to look for water, and we want to look for soda. I don't know if soda's an option. We'll try it though. So when we want to add a second basic data, or a second of anything, we can come over here and click Add Condition. So now we have a water or soda. And we did return a soda, but there's something wrong in the code because you can obviously see that we didn't return the results we were looking for. And so this is where, you know, trial and error is going to help you out and to understand what's going on here. So if I remove the revenue center, come back to basic data and say we're going to look for water or soda, and we query this, it doesn't like my query. Now if you get that coming up, that means that something in your query is incorrect. And most of what happens here is we just have to try to identify where the problem is and fix the query. This is why the query builder is so hard for most people to understand, is to be able to return the results they're looking for. If you have problems, feel free to call me, my team, or any of the support people, and I'll be able to help you identify where the problem is. Coming back over to the query builder, another good place to start is going to be using check number. Most everybody that I talk to always has that phone call that comes in and says the cashier says they received 20 from the patron saying that they gave a $100 bill. If we have a check number, now all we can do is pop in the system, we select check number, it's going to show up here, and now we can type in our check number. So we find it real quick. So check number 4,000. Make sure that's at equals and hit query. And now we can see the entire. Oh, we're frozen. Hang tight 1 second, let the computer catch up. Alrighty, now we're back. We got the check number, we put in 4,000, we hit query, and now it's going to show us every step of the, or every line item for that entire check. So we can see that, oh, and this is another thing to remember, when you do this query, you see how we have all Zoot, and we have this revenue center, and we have another revenue center. Depending on where you are, you might cycle through check numbers multiple times throughout a day. So the only one we're interested in is this all Zoot, so we can look at it and see if there was in fact a $100 bill, if it was a $20 bill. All right, back over in our query builder, we can also look for event type identifiers. Now the event type identifiers are all the stuff that shows up as your POS events. your adjust check, your begin checks, your clock ins, your clock outs, your discounts, menu item voids, no sales. All of these items can be searched for. One of the things I like to do is I search for total due less than $1.08. I know you saw that query, and it's one I like to do. The primary reason is for us out here, an item that's priced at $1 will end up being $1.08 with tax. And we've actually had cases at different coffee shops, places like that, where someone will buy a coffee, they know they owe $3, they throw down $3, the cashier brings up a cream cheese, and gives the rest to themselves in tip. So the way we're going to build this query is we're going to look for the event type identifier. We'll hit this drop down and we'll hit total due. You see that total due put a 37 up here. That's the event type number that's associated with total due. So we're looking for any checks with a total due, and we want to get less than $1.08. So now that's where we would add monetary amount. We can put our $0.08, and we want to search for any checks that are less than. So now I've got my total due $0.08 less than. I query this, and now I have all of my checks where the total due was less than $0.08. We've got $1.04, 72 cents, all of this. So now if we wanted to save this query onto our summary page, so we always have it there, we can run the query quickly, never have to worry about putting it in the system. It's going to be relatively easy. We come back over to our query builder, and we hit save as. So total due less than $0.08. If you check this to make it private, it will make it private only to your login and only to the people that have admin privileges. If you have full admin rights, you're going to see everybody's queries. If you're set up as a viewer, you're going to be able to save this as so that only you see it and only admin. So when we hit save, it's going to save that query. Now when we go back to our summary view, we should see total due less than $0.08. You see, actually I've done it twice because I've done it before. Like before, if we click on this graph, it's going to give me a graph of all those checks, where I click on yesterday's information, and now I have yesterday's checks that were less than $0.08. Okay. Alerts have been something that a lot of people have asked about. If you want to make that particular query an alert, so you get an alert anytime that happens, we go to Setup, we go to your POS, your Query Manager, and you'll see a list of all of your queries in here. Here we can see the total due less than $0.08 query we just made, and right here you see this real-time alerts. We click on this, and now it's going to give us an alert. And I don't know if you guys have noticed, but in the bottom right-hand corner of my screen over here, it's been popping up every once in a while. There's alerts that are set up in our demo system to auto-populate for us. So those will auto-populate whenever total due is less than $0.08 for us. Now, on your system, once you have the updates in place, yours will actually show up in here. And they're going to say auto alert. We've actually turned them off on our demo system because obviously with the demo system a lot of people are in here and there's a lot of alerts set up. But right here where it says needs review or needs test, it's going to have auto alert. And it's going to have the server's name in here for the name. That way if you leave your computer or leave your workstation, they're always going to be populating and saving for you, so they're always there for you to look at at a later time. Do we have any questions on the query builder? Alrighty, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to move on to the cameras tab. For those of you who have cameras, most people, this is one of the easier sides of the Econix system is to open up cameras. In the Econix system, there's multiple ways you can open up cameras. Up here at the top, we can type in the camera we're looking for. We'll start with the letter. We'll should populate up. Oop, might help if I use the right ones on the POS cameras. So now I can search for it that way. I can drag and drop what I'm looking for. I can click on the plus symbol, and it'll add the camera. Now the one thing to know, if you're one of the people who like to drag and drop your cameras in, if I drag camera Z5, you see I have Z3 up here currently, if I drag Z5 over and drop it, it's actually just going to replace the one that was there already. So I tell people, try not to drag and drop. I prefer using this plus because it will add additional camera, then I can come back and close this out. As everybody's aware, everything on the right-hand side of the screen here is all hyperlinked. So if I want to see this mushroom sandwich and chips being rung up, I can click on this. It's going to rewind the video to that time. Now what most people don't know, if I hit sync times right here, it will automatically sync any other cameras that I have open to the time on this camera. Subsequently, if we do it over here, when we sync times, it's going to sync all cameras to this camera's time. So now if we go to items up in the upper right hand corner, you see these three monitors. What this stands for is this is your revenue center. So if you have 5 terminals in the revenue center, this is going to show you all the data flowing at once. That's why you'll see data flowing but nothing happening on the register. To change that, we go to items, and now we can select the actual register. Now we click on it, and anytime the screen's touched, it's going to be stuff that's being run up. Back over on the right hand side, you'll see we have the arrows. The arrow will allow you to hit the drop down and see all the cameras that are in that tree. To the right, you'll see a small number and a plus symbol next to that. If you were to look at this at store 1010, there's 6 cameras. If I click on this plus, it's going to add all 6 cameras at the same time. So now we have all of our cameras up and running. If we want to close them, we can close them one at a time by clicking on this X, or we can click the X at the bottom of the screen down here, and it will close out all the cameras at once. Alrighty, so the next thing I want to go into is how to create a case. We've been watching somebody, they've done some suspicious stuff, we want to create a case, and we want to save it. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and find my case. I'm going to click on this, begin check. I'm going to pause the video because this is where I want to start my case. Click on items, the upper right hand corner again. And usually there's going to be something here called incident report or incident tracker. We click on that, and we come up to our where we're going to start archiving our video clips. So I can select my start point, so this is where I wanted to start my recording. And I'll go ahead and I'll play it out so I can see what's going on the register. So we ring up a coffee, paid for with cash, we get $17.85 and change. Alrighty, so now that's going to be the end of my clip. So now I've selected my start time, I've selected my end time. So I'll hit continue. Now from here I can add this video clip to an existing case. It looks like we're froze up again for a second. Just bear with me, everybody. So the computer's a little frozen. Okay, looks like we're caught up now. So now that I have my start time and my end time, I'm going to hit continue. Once I hit continue, I can add it to an existing case, or I can add it to a new case. If I click existing, it's going to allow me to, by clicking on this arrow, it will allow me to insert this video clip into any case that I'm currently working on. I also go back and I can create a new case. If I create a new case, it's going to ask me for an incident name and a summary name. Once you've input that, you can select the incident type. Was it a test case? Was it theft? You can also set permissions. You can select if you just want to have certain users have access to view this case, or if you want everyone to have access to view this case. Okay, for this purposes, I'm just going to add this to an existing case. So we have 50 test cases. I'm going to add it to this test incident number 62. Now I have to name the media. We'll call it test cache transaction. I'm going to save this video clip. Now, because this video clip, is only about 30 seconds, it will archive relatively quickly. If you're trying to archive a larger clip, because we're usually reading from your DVR system, when we encode that back onto our server, we actually have to record it in real time. So if it's a 20-minute clip, it's usually going to take about 20 minutes to save it onto our server. So we come back over here to our cases, and we should see case 62. And you can see right here it hasn't finished yet. So we'll give it another few seconds and it should finish up. All right, we'll come back. It'll finish up here in a few minutes. Are there any questions on making cases? Alrighty. Are there any questions in general for anything on the Econex system? Does anybody have any gaming products they want to go over? I want to open it up to any questions. So feel free to raise your hand or type in a question. We'll get to it. All right. While I'm waiting for that, here's our clip. It finally did show up here. We can hit play. This is going to play the video, and you're going to see the data over here just like before. So we go down. We can watch the transaction. Now we have that saved on our server. But now I know a lot of you will have to go to court. Might have to send this off to an attorney or the police, and you want to download this clip. To download it, we simply click on download. Let's see this. I didn't pull. All right. And as you guys can see right here, the clip is downloaded. So all I'm going to do is tell it to keep it. And I'm going to run it. If you have Windows 8, it's going to ask you to run it anyway. It's a safety measure. It's going to be an executable file. So the player, the video, the data, everything's all built into one. It will automatically play on your screen. You don't have to install any software or do anything crazy. The one caveat is it's going to have to be on a PC. This exe won't work on a Mac. The alerts we were talking about, you see this alert that popped up down here. So this has alerted us that a transaction we've set to alert us has popped up. We can click on this, and it's going to open up the video clip wherever that transaction is happening at the time. So I want to open up the floor to any questions. We've covered the query builder today. We've covered the summary view. We've gone over creating a case, pulling up cameras, reviewing data, and syncing cameras. Are there any questions anybody has? All right, well, if there are no questions, I hope to see you guys on May 13th. Please register if you need the email address or need the link to register for any upcoming webinars. Please email me. My email address is bob@econnect.tv. It's bob@econnect.tv. Also, if you have any questions about stuff we've gone over in the webinar, want some additional training, please feel free to reach out to me or anyone at eConnect, and we will set up that time. Thanks for joining us on this webinar, and we will see you next time.